After your drawing files are completed for your puzzle cube project, you then need to assemble all of your 5 pieces of your puzzle cube into an assembly in Inventor. So if you look on the screen, this is my fully assembled puzzle cube for all the pieces. I've shown you some examples of different pieces for different aspects for the drawing files and for the individual part files as well. This is all 5 of the pieces of my puzzle cube assembled, and this is what you're going to have to create. So the first thing you're going to need to do is open a new assembly file. And if you go to the iPro button and go to New, if you hover over New, there's an option for assembly here. And just like we did for the drawing files, you can also go to New from Template. And if you do that, you want to make sure you choose this standard IAM assembly file, not the weldment, but the standard IAM. So I'll double click there. And it would also been just as acceptable to select New and Assembly from this list as well. So either one of those would work. And then the third option would be up here on your Quick Access toolbar. The drop down under New, Assembly is there as well. So the first thing you're going to want to do is place your components. So you have to make sure that you have all of your puzzle cube pieces completed in IPT files and they all are named correctly before you start. It's extremely important that your files are named correctly. If you assemble them and then go back and change the names later, it's not the end of the world, but it makes it kind of a pain to manage, and you'll have to correct some things when you reopen your assembly file. So first thing you're going to do is go up here to the ribbon under Component and select Place. The other place that you could do that is if you right click and go to the Place Component option here in your radial menu, in your right click menu, you can go there as well. And it's going to open a file explorer, and you'll just have to navigate to wherever your files are. Mine are located under My Documents, IED, Puzzle Cube Project, and then Inventor Files. And then I have to choose which part I'm going to place. If I go and take a look at my hand drawing or my ISO, you'll notice I have my front and my back view like I'm supposed to. And you kind of have to pick one of these to work off of. So for me, I'm going to pick this purple cube here to start, or purple part rather, to start off with. It's located on the bottom of the cube. It's kind of like what I call a base to work off of. So I'm going to start with the purple one, and we'll talk more about that later. So I'm going to go down to pcube underscore purple underscore C Townsend and open that. And when I do that, I have this option here where it's going to allow me to click to place it. So if I go ahead and left click and place my part, it's going to give me the option again. So if I left click again, it's going to place another part, which I don't want. So in order to place a part, you'll just hit, once you've placed it, you'll hit right click and hit OK. Now, since I've placed an additional component, I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to hit the delete key on the keyboard, and that'll get rid of that extra part. If you happen to place an extra one, the first couple times you do this, you'll probably accidentally place an extra part or two. So now that I have my first cube in here, the first thing I need to do is make sure that this doesn't move. This is going to be my base, so I'm going to do what's called grounding. So I'm going to right click on this cube, and under this menu there's an option called grounded. And what I want you to also pay attention to is over here in the browser, what this component looks like here in the browser, especially this icon before and then after I right click and hit grounded. You'll notice it has a little tack pin on it, and that's how you can identify which puzzle part is grounded over here in your browser. So now if I try to move this thing, click and hold, I can't move it at all, and that's what we want. Before we move on any farther, I want to go ahead and save this file. So I'm going to go to the iPro button and hit the save icon, and you'll notice it says assembly 2 up here, so I haven't saved this yet. So I'll hit the save button. And I already have one here, so I'm just going to call this pcube underscore assembly underscore C Townsend, and that's what yours should be called with your first initial last name. I'm just going to call this number 2 just so I can keep it separate from my other one, and I'm going to click save. It's extremely important that you do not save all these individual files to Google Drive and work from Google Drive. You should use Google Drive to back up your files. So when you save all these and when you're working on the assembly file, make sure that you save the assembly and all of your puzzle cube pieces locally on the computer you're working on in the same folder. Once you have the assembly done or all your parts done and the assembly done, you can then upload them to Google Drive. Now that we have everything saved, we're going to go ahead and insert our next component. So if we go back to our hand drawing, I went ahead and placed my purple component here, and I have a couple options. I could place this green one or this orange one. They're both touchable, but I'm going to go ahead and place this blue one here, which is also represented over here. So I'm going to go back to my inventor drawing, and I'm going to right click and select place component, and I'm going to go down to my blue part and click open. Now I can't really place this directly in its orientation that it'll be assembled, so I'm just going to left click, place one, and then I'm going to right click and hit OK. Now I can constrain this straight from here, which I'll show you in a minute, but if I want to rotate this to get it close to what orientation it's actually going to be assembled in, I can right click, choose free rotate, and then I can freely rotate this part around. And it's a little touchy, so you gotta kind of get used to it. But I'm going to get it just somewhere that's close in the orientation, and I'm going to right click OK. So I have this part here. I'm going to go back and look at my hand drawing just to make sure I have this correct. But this single cube of that blue part is going to insert into that purple part, and then later the orange one will insert here. So that part will insert into there, and then I'll have the other two going up this way. And in order to assemble these, remember we have this part grounded here, and you'll notice if I hover over it, it has the little pin there and then also the pin over here in the browser. This part, if I click and try to drag it, it won't move anywhere. So what I want to do is constrain this blue part to the purple part. In order to do that, I can go up here to the ribbon, to this relationships panel, to the constraint command, or I can right click and choose constraint. And once you choose constraint, there's two different options. You actually have a bunch of different options here. We're not going to look at any of these other ones. We're going to stay specific to this mate type constraint. And then once you're in mate, you have two options. You have a actual mate where you make two faces touch one another. So if I wanted to touch this face to the opposite side of this blue one, I could mate those together. Or we have a flush constraint when I want a face and another face to be aligned and flush to one another. And to fully constrain each of your parts, each of them needs 3 different constraints. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to choose my flush, and I'm inserting this into here, so I know that this outside face and this outside face will need to be aligned and flush to one another. So I'm going to select this face, and then I'm going to select this face, and you'll notice that puzzle cube moves, so you'll have to hit apply. And if I rotate this thing here, you'll notice that no matter how I move this, that edge stays aligned. Now if I go to a different ISO view and move this, it looks like it's moving all over the place, but that face stays flush no matter what. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to actually flush this top face and this top face here. So I'm going to rotate to the back side here. I want to flush this face and this face. So I'm going to choose this one. Oh, I'm going to hit cancel because I accidentally clicked one while I was in that panel before. I'm going to hit constraint again, and I want to flush this face and this face. And that automatically selected mate. That'll happen sometimes. Instead of redoing everything, all you have to do is click flush and to flip it over and hit apply. And I'm going to hit cancel here. And now I can move this part in and out. So all I need to do is get one last constraint in order to constrain this part to the purple part. And I can have a couple choices, but I'm going to go ahead and hit constraint. And this time I'm going to use a true mate. And I can mate this face and the backside of this purple one, or I can mate this face on the blue one and the backside of this purple one. I'm just going to choose this because it's here, easily accessible. Click there, and then click on that face and hit apply. Now if I close this menu and I try to grab this, you'll see that little circle with the cross through it, meaning that I cannot move this part, which means it's fully constrained to the purple part. Now that I have those two constrained, I'm going to go ahead and place my orange part, which if I go back to my drawing is right here. It's going to insert into that other side of that purple part. So I'm going to grab my orange part, I'm going to hit open, and then I'm just going to left click to place and right click OK. And I'm going to zoom out here a bit. Then I'm going to right click on the part and do free rotate and rotate this thing so it gets close to the orientation it's going to be. Play with it a little bit, and I'm going to right click OK. So these two cubes are going to sit right here between this blue and the purple part. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose constraint up here in the ribbon. Once again, I could right click, and I'm going to use the mate type, and I'm going to use flush. And I'm going to flush this edge of this blue part to this edge of this orange part here and hit apply. And then I'm also going to flush this edge here with this edge here and hit apply. Now if I close this part can move up and down completely. So the last thing I do is I'm going to go to the bottom view of this ISO, and I'm going to mate the bottom of this the bottom of this orange part with the top of the purple part. So I'll choose constrain, and then I'm going to use a true mate, and I'm going to mate that orange part with, and I could choose either this blue or the purple part here, and hit apply, and now cancel, and this part cannot move, so it is fully constrained. So I'm going to bring in my next part, and I'm going to look at my hand drawing again, and this time I'm going to bring in my green part. So I'm going to hit right click, and actually I need to escape out of there. I'm going to right click and place component, and I'm going to choose my green part, hit open, and I'm just going to place and right click OK. Now instead of rotating this thing into the actual orientation it needs to be, I can just constrain it straight from this view. So if I, this is going to rotate slightly, and this cube on this side is going to insert there next to that purple. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit constraint, and I want to use a flush constraint, and I'm going to flush this purple side to this bottom of this green side here, and hit apply. And you'll notice that that went ahead and rotated that where I needed to be. Then I'm going to use another flush constraint with this end of this green part and this end of this orange part, and hit apply. And hit cancel, and you'll notice I can move this up and down, but nowhere else. And then I need one last constraint, which is a true mate. I'm going to mate this purple part of this purple here to the bottom part of this green part. And zoom out a bit and hit apply and close. And now this part is fully constrained. And then the last part that I need to insert is my red part. So I'm going to go down and choose red and open. And I'm going to left click and then right click and OK. And I'm not going to rotate this one again. I'm just going to go ahead and constrain it straight from here. I'm going to use a flush constraint first, and I know that the bottom, this is going to flip basically over, and this cube here is going to insert here. So I'm going to flush constraint the top of this green part with this part of my red part and hit apply. And then that reorients it for me. And then I'm going to use another flush constraint with this end here, and then this end of the cube. I could use this green part will work, and hit apply and close. And notice that I can move this in and out here. So the last thing I need to do is do a true mate between this red part and the inside here. So I'm going to use constrain, true mate, and I'm actually going to mate this green part and rotate around here to this side of the red part and hit apply and close. Now, if I go in and try to click on any of these parts, you'll notice I get that circle with the X through it, which means everything is fully constrained, and I am done with the assembly of my cube. This only works if you ground your first part, which you notice our purple one is grounded, and then also if you expand all these, you can see all of the constraints that I have. So if I accidentally put an incorrect constraint on my part, and I don't want to just delete the part and reinsert a new one, I can come over to my browser and I can right click on one of my constraints and I can hit delete in order to get rid of that constraint, and that'll allow me to reconstrain it instead of deleting it and totally reinserting it.